Thank you, Principal Sir, for your vote of thanks. I, Sharanya,
And I, Gunjit.
students of the National Insurance Academy, are thrilled to take you forward for the first panel discussion of the day, where we'll be exploring the theme The Architects of Work HR Perspective from a Disruptive World. The moderator for this panel is Dr. Rajesh Save, co founder of Impeca Consulting LLP.
I request the esteemed experts to kindly come forward and form the dais as we introduce them briefly. Dr. Save brings with him over 3 decades of experience in HR, consulting, and AI product development. He holds a PhD in psychometrics from the University of Mumbai and has been the global head of HR in international corporations, a consultant for analytics for globally reputed firms. Dr. Save specializes in machine learning and people analytics.
Ms. Anaga Panse is the Director of Human Resources at Ernst Young. With over 16 years of experience in the United Kingdom, she brings extensive experience specializing in workforce transformation and people impact. Her career spans diverse regions, including the European Union, Middle East, North America. Her experience lies in crafting growth oriented people strategies.
Ms. Preeti Singh is the Chief People Officer at Universal Sompo, recognized for driving high performance and HR strategies that enhance organizational effectiveness. She has successfully led initiatives in organization designs, talent solutions, and leadership development across Asia and North America. At Universal Sompo, her focus has been on achieving businesses' wide strategic goals through a comprehensive talent strategy.
Mr. Sundar Natarajan is the Chief Human Resources Officer at India First Life Insurance Company. An alumnus of NMIM and an executive alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad and ISB Hyderabad, he has transitioned from the role of Chief Risk Officer to CHRO, which has helped him to bring agility in self, drive organizational change and employee experience, and yet be cognizant to realities on the ground and be prudent to regulations and compliance business. Over the years, he has worked with various organizations of repute like Royal Sundaram General Insurance, Aviva India, and IRM India affiliate.
Mr. Vamsidhar Soma is the head of human resource at Mahindra Insurance Brokers, bringing almost 2 decades of extensive experience in shaping and executing impactful HR strategies. A seasoned HR professional, he has successfully led initiatives in talent management, employee engagement, and performance management. He holds an advanced management program from IIM Calcutta and is also a postgraduate in planning and entrepreneurship from IIPM Chennai with a global professional certificate in human resources, GPHR, HRCI. He is also an associate certified coach at ICF.
Mr. Vikramjit Singh is the Senior President and Chief of Human Resources, ILM, and Administration at Bajaj Allianz General Insurance. With over 2 decades of experience in HR and strategic business operations, his contributions to the HR field have been recognized with multiple prestigious awards across the Indian subcontinent, Asia Pacific, and globally. Recognized as a transformational and accomplished thought leader, his career includes key roles at L&T, Vodafone, and Deutsche Bank.
Following the brief introductions, I kindly invite my colleagues to formally welcome them. Thank you so much to all the speakers. Now I request the moderator, Dr. Save, to kindly commence the discussions. At the end, if time permits, he may also take some questions from the audience. Over to you, Sundar.
Check one. Well, thank you so much for the warm welcome, and we are really overwhelmed. You know, the introductions, I think, at least in Mike, is a little hyped up. So please, take your pick on that, but definitely not the entirety. Anyway, uh, uh, I must compliment Dr. Sushma, Dr. Archana, and Dr. Ruchika for forming this panel. For the first time, I'm saying right mix of the practice and the HR. So definitely, we'll look forward to have a diverse. So we've been talking about diversity and inclusion, but I think you guys have done a really great job of having, in fact, in all way diverse. You can see the panel as well. So we're on the cusp of a great digital revolution, and I think it was most appropriate time. It wouldn't have been any other appropriate time to have this kind of discussions. We are at the intersection of human development, at the same time, rapid technological change. As a famous baseball player, Yogi Berra, would say, the future aren't what it used to be. And so appropriately said, because the exponential change what is happening in AI and ML and the related areas, every day comes with a new news that, this is something which is happening and your knowledge becomes dated so fast. So on that backdrop, less comments, on this, and specifically, I would like to start with Vikram because, when I remember, the first revolution started little about a decade ago. What is most important for us, which was very very innovative at that point in time, is the video-based interviews. And that point in time, we were also pretty zapped. How can you have it and things like that, right? So I think Vikram was the one who was done a pioneering efforts in that kind of stuff. So I would start with you, Vikram. Just quickly take us through the entire journey, and I would request all the panel members to be a little brief because we can't eat up too much into the half an hour that you have in between, and most of the times the panels generally go for long. So I would request all the panel members to be a little brief and crisp. So Vikram, please take us through your journey, and that's how we would start the discussions.
Thank you, Rajesh. Good morning, all. And while the buzzer round starts actually in that way, it's for us. Uh, just to jog back the memory lane, what typically the belief in terms of when we look at things in terms of whether AI, ML, or any other technology coming in, or whether at that matter, a few years back, blockchain obviously was hitting the roof in terms of the charts of doing things. The thought was, why can't we actually look at large language models or NLPs along with forensics, which were pre existing technologies at that moment of time? LLM was still evolving. Was to look at how do we actually link it to build and assess people, which can become a secondary assessment tool from a human assessment. So it doesn't replace, and where we started was how do we make assessments better of people who become a part of the success story and with the organization where they write their own and the organization equally benefits alongside. And while combining some of these technologies was where we started with obviously looking at robotic video interviews. And these was where the technology helped in terms of solving the problem. A lot of time the problem is, the HR person or the hiring manager needs to be available for an interview, the candidate needs to be available for an interview. Can we solve a problem of obviously saying 24/7 any day in a year you actually take interviews, which is at the comfort level of the candidate rather than the organization? Now, this is easier said and done, and this is where the genesis actually started of using technology, connecting the dots along with this. And in the whole journey, one of the big challenges which we faced was the bandwidth in India at that moment of time of the network connection, because you require a seamless flow of obviously the data getting shared, which is nothing but recording of what the video is happening on one of the sites. We improved in 6 months to saying even on a 2G it can work in villages, which is there. So the data packets could get transferred and questions would obviously be streamed in such a manner that your speed still is there and then the recording still happens. It took 2-3 years for us to really improve on that. But what happened was, in just 1 year, we could actually, with just a team of 10 people in hiring, we could actually do more than 4 lakh interviews, which is there. And the databases of getting built up, and people were getting their own assessments back in terms of how they could actually perform and do better. The second part of the same journey was the same tool was used for parsing the resume, but equally in terms of suggesting people where they can fit even more than where they are applying. So that's another very, very different thing, because a lot of times we think we do something good, but there are certain places where you can equally do good or try your luck in terms of obviously performing better over a period of time. And this tool also helped us to actually direct people into places and jobs where they could do better, and even as an organization we could also relate to it and build over that in that ways. So this was something which helped the organization to grow fast, grow very economically from hiring, and look at very large scale operations to be built up in a very small period of time, which is there. So some of those benefits got accrued over a period of time, and it's very cost effective, which was there. So, and we took feedback continuously from the people who had gone through the process, both from a candidate as well as from the hiring managers, because then we, over a period of time, we started to link the outcomes, the competence which were coming out of that, behavioral competencies, to performance as well as longevity in the organization, which is attrition. And we started to prune the tools even better, so that there is success from a short term and long term, which then becomes a proof of a concept to continue. And right now we use it even for actually assessment centers in a certain way. And especially during COVID, it also helped us, is where proctoring is required in terms of certain things, but you can't be physically present. And this tool was much ahead of time, where proctoring was done automatically through the tool itself, which right now a lot of universities, even in the global sites now, are doing for IELTS, TOEFL, to other things, where they've started post-COVID. We started pre-COVID actually onto that. So thank you. In the interest of time, I'll just pass it on.
Sure. No, that was really a great piece of information, because as an extension of what he said, at the moment the video interviews have taken a very different shape with the latest image processing technologies available. When interviews happen, so basically when a particular person is being interviewed, the focus of interviewer is on the content of the answer, but he or she is not looking at the expressions on the face while giving the answer. So how confident? So now the image processing technologies give you a complete map of different feelings on the sentiments on the face. That's something which has really changed a lot of game. So thank you, Vikram, for that perspective. Overall, he also spoke about hiring and other things. So Sundar, I would like to know your perspective and your experience on how ML and AI has been used in various facets of HR, because it is engulfing almost every sphere of the HR domain. So just take us through what you guys have done and you guys have experienced.
Sure. Thank you, Rajesh. And thanks to NIA to invite me. It's the 4th time I think I'm coming here, and every time it's a learning experience. Today started off being a learning experience, and I am sure I'll connect with Vikram to get some insights. Since he's talked about pre-hiring, I'll skip that bit. So let me try to draw parallels. If you were to look at a customer journey vis-a-vis an employee journey, in a customer journey, if you were to look at, before you onboard a customer, at the time you onboard a customer, and post, and let's say in a Swiggy, it's a jiffy, right, to get onboarded onto Swiggy. It's a delight to make a purchase, and if you mention Vada Pav 4 times, you may get a push notification. Okay, so that's the level of seamless customer experience, which is given to the end customer, and at the background it's AI, ML, or some mumbo jumbo which you may want to talk about, and of course Rajesh knows best. Now let's look at an employee journey. Why can't the employee journey also be like that? It can be like that. You have the same where you can split it into pre-hiring, during hiring, and post-hiring. So Vikram spoke about pre-hiring. There's a whole lot of stuff we can do during hiring. We today do an EKYC of a customer. Same can be done with a prospect employee. We can do background verifications just by seeking a link and on a real-time basis. You can use a single UAN to check out the past history of the employee. But the very big earth-shattering, I would say, experience I have had in the last 9 months, in my current portfolio has been, in the post-hiring space, where we are able to engage with our employees and people who have quit without manual intervention, right? So there are push notifications which go on mail, on WhatsApp, and people respond, and there is a iterative exchange which happens with that employee, and using that we are able to arrive at an ENPS, Employee Net Promoter Score. And this Employee Net Promoter Score gives us a very, very good idea about how happy, passionate, or connected the employee is with the organization, and is a direct reflection on the underlying KPIs, from a human resource point of view, which is attrition, productivity, and of course happiness. These are the three very, very basic things, right? And all of these, if we are able to do without an army of people, using technology, using intelligence, then it's amazing. And to answer your first question in one line, Rajesh, are we making waves, across these three spectrums? I would say no. We have hardly scratched the surface. We are not making waves at all. And if we are not making waves at all, then there is amazing opportunity which is staring at us. People in the room can benefit, if they step up their game into becoming, adept at AI and ML.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Sundar. So just to quickly build up on what you said in terms of waves and other things, PepsiCo, for example, created an engine called High Value, which is dedicated engine for HR in terms of creating value out of implementation of AI and ML, and that's an amazingly beautiful solution that they started. Unilever has done a lot of stuff. They have actually saved 75% of their hiring time by using ML and analytics. But too often, specifically Vantage, which is little, probably, I wouldn't say older, I would use the word more experienced than our generation of HR professionals, always would say that we can understand the transactional activities have been completely automated, and which is what essentially has been done so far. But how about decision making? Can AI take decisions for HR? Whether to hire or not. Now, that's a very big thing. Okay, so whether it is a decision support system or decision making system is something which one needs to look at it. So I would request Vamsi to talk about how critical decision making has been stimulated as well as pushed by AI ML that you guys have done so far, and what's the way forward?
See, I think while there are a lot of digitalization that has been there in the space of AI, ML, and Vikram did speak about blockchain being the latest thing which has come in place, right? I think where we have been able to not see the success of it is in converting those interventions into success, right? In the sense where we are able to provide actionable insights to the decision makers in the organization. And if you have to take the fundamentals of it, it's because the quality of data and insights that gets generated out of each of these initiatives, and that is where I believe there is a lot of scope of improvement for all of us and the generation to come, right? And if I have to say, I mean, how we do it is, or from my experience where I've worked with different is, I think I followed a simple principle called taper. Okay. So you take any of the AI, ML, or even analytics that we try to talk about, right? See if you can apply it on, first is your talent acquisition, right? Next is on your attrition management. Third is performance management. Fourth is engagement insights. And fifth is retention management, right? Rather than applying it as whether it's on recruitment, in onboarding, right? If we are able to apply these, any of these initiatives in these 5 areas, okay, and see if you can get actionable insights out of these 5 areas, okay. And second thing is, now it's very easier said than done, right? I mean, the primary challenge that all of us face is in terms of we get tools, okay, now the organizations are ready to invest in these tools, but all of us face 2 areas, right? Usability, right, and adoption, right? And this can come in only if we are able to combine the rigor of data, okay, in terms of creating a very robust mindset of data insights, right? Creating a data-driven culture and decision making, okay. It's a great thing that again I'm going to quote on Vikram, because he simply said with 10 recruiters he was able to do around 10,000 interviews, or right, 3-4 lakhs of interviews. So look at the ratio, right? I mean, with 10 recruiters and 3-4 lakhs of interviews. Now that's a data insight. Now that's a business case that we can look into it. Right? So if we are able to link any of the success parameters with data and to the AI and ML and able to create value, right? Then I think I've seen success there. And a couple of initiatives which I can recall, which I've done in the previous organization is, everybody started to use WhatsApp as a formal means of communication. And there used to be a lot of proprietary information that used to go around in WhatsApp. I still believe a lot of organizations still have that, okay, culture which is there, no matter what we try to do. Now there is a solution that there is WhatsApp for business is there, okay. But when it was not there, then what we had to do is we brought in a alternative which is very similar to WhatsApp, okay. Now, and we started building insights onto it. Now people what they were doing is they were following up on reviews, performances, right? So we simply tried to replicate whatever WhatsApp could do into that alternative messaging system. And at the end of the day, there used to be one person who used to consolidate for around 26 locations and give data. There used to be one person dedicated. Now this messaging system started doing that, right? So when you are able to combine data with technology and give insights, that has worked.
Actually, you know, this word data has created a lot of ripples in the last few years. You know, one of the most celebrated quality gurus, Deming, once said that I have trust in God. Everyone else should come with data. That itself shows that how data is very important. So when we were talking, I mean, in fact, he just spoke about proprietary information, which is of course data, right? And we've been talking about compromising our data, which is everyone else has a lot of calls you receive, right, for various kind of loans and stuff like that, which means that phone numbers are compromised. In the last decade, when this 4 letters GDPR came, data guys, we hated that. I'm sorry for that matter. But I think that is something which is very important, because later we realized the importance of this data sanctity and importance of proprietary information. So that's very important in the ethical side of the entire data revolution, and I think that is going to be protecting a lot of us in terms of our rights. Okay, so I'd like to request Anaga, because you have been in this particular field for ages now, right? I would say ages, because the definition of time is so elongated. Like even if you are here for a couple of years, it becomes ages, right? So please tell us, and most importantly, she has had her stint abroad as well. Why I said about diversity in this particular panel, because 2 of us, have had long stints abroad. So that diversity is also both of you managed to get it, right? So Anaga, please, take us through the entire process of GDPR. I think all of us are from insurance area, right? So,
Yeah.
allude to that as well, but of course HR.
Definitely. So GDPR, as soon as the word is dropped, even abroad, people start sweating. They switch off completely. So this has not been one of the most favorite things that people like to talk about. But this is one of the most important compliance regulatory requirements in the EU, which I think it was in 2018 when we heard the term GDPR, which is basically data protection. I'll give you an example of how GDPR affected us as HR professionals. Any employee now in the EU can request for every bit of information that the organization holds on the employee. And there is a statute of limitation in which that information has to be provided. So it could literally be their login access, it could be every email that has been passed in an organization with that employee's name or initials in it, and that has to be shared with the employee. So this is the impact of what GDPR does and how much time it takes individually. I've had my team sift through thousands of emails when such a request has come through, and usually, as you might be aware, in the West, employment tribunals are quite critical, and this information is used for tribunals. So this is just one of the side effects of GDPR. However, as we move on to this digitalized phase of generation AI, we are talking about ML. It is not just sustainable value creating through tools, but what we are trying to do here is creating a people-centric culture, an organization where we think about people, where people are at the center of the transformation. So what is the framework that should be introduced to support, to foster that growth? So the first thing I would talk about is data governance. Do we know what are the different sources of data in your organization? Have we classified it? Do we know where is this information coming from? How is it stored? Do we talk about consent with our employees? Do they know? Is there an implied consent? So whenever you're applying for a job, as we've talked about talent acquisition, there are a lot of times you see, do you accept the terms and conditions, which is this tiny typo which nobody reads. That's an implied consent. Under GDPR, that's not allowed. Implied consent is not a consent. Then we talk about ethics in data. So do we know what is the decision-making tree for any of these functions? And these are the aspects we need to think about while thinking about GDPR, while thinking about cross-boundary working. One of the most important things that we consider when talking about compliance and health is, what about the employee data? After it is being used, how long do you store it? So if I had to ask for a reference for somebody who worked with the organization 18 years before, would we be able to give information? No. In EU, that is illegal. You'll have to purge all the records 6 years after. What about absence data management? And the reason why I'm giving you these small examples, that means that in the system itself, there should be privacy default settings which should be activated. When you're looking at any of your existing systems, what is the default anonymization of the information? Do you find information based on, say, Joe Blogs, or is it found an anonymized person who works in a sales team? Is that in consideration? What about the ethics part of it? This Gen AI is beautiful, it's wonderful, it does so many great things, but it also amplifies bias in the system. And what that means is, all of you might be aware of the example of what Amazon did with its recruitment tool. They started a recruitment tool which was based on the data that they had of recruitment for the last 10 years. But the basic flaw was, the recruitment tool always favored male employees as opposed to female. So when this new recruitment tool, which was based on that recruitment process, was implemented, it started rejecting all female candidates. And that was the bias which was then amplified. So when we introduce these machine learning, AI, have we looked at the bias? Have we audited it enough to make sure that these biases are removed? What are the systems? Have we done any kind of checks, which we call as DPIA, so basically data protection impact assessments. So what is the impact of this tool which we'll have on our organization? And again, this cannot be done in isolation without employees, without people, customers, stakeholders, employees, and external clients. What is the impact of all of this? HR traditionally has been compared always with our peer teams, finance. Where does payroll sit? Does it sit with finance? Does it sit with HR? Where does performance management sit? However, now with the advent of this digitalization, we directly can be measured by the value that we bring to the organization, the value that we bring to the employees. AT&T has recently released a program where they were looking at employee engagement information, something similar to what you talked about. And what they did was they looked at actionable insights that came from their employee engagement surveys, from their performance management analysis, and that directly fed into their HR strategy. Again, actionable outcomes that came. But for that, the framework that is required needs to consider the things that we talked about. And I'm sure there are many more that we will as we uncover this new world of digitalization.
Thank you so much. But one thing is very clear. I don't think it's as scary as I thought about in terms
Absolutely
of
not.
GDPR. I always hated when I started my journey in machine learning. And all of us know, those who know machine learning, that it's basically a training data and testing data, right? So when you use the training data, it's a data in the history, which is bias. And that's the reason that gender bias and racial bias big time in US. So much so that NLP, natural language processing, if you use and you ask, in fact, it can actually rectify with the Gen AI. Everybody is writing their CVs and profiles using Gen AI. But when Gen AI wasn't around, NLP could identify that whether the CV is written by a male or a female. That kind of precision it is to give. And that's why bias was extremely important. And then obviously it's not only about bias in terms of gender, but there are a lot of other areas of bias as well. So talking of bias, and thanks for kicking off that topic, I would like to request Preeti about it, because you have done a lot of, I would say, bias neutral stuff in your previous company, and I think all of us would like to know more about it, because a couple of days ago I posted one article, not article, a video on LinkedIn about Gen AI, and there were a lot of questions and messages came to me, and the most important things about bias, how Gen AI is taking care of bias. So, my selfish interest, but yeah, for everyone, please take us through it.
Thank you, Rajesh. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, NIA, for inviting me here. It's been absolutely delight to hear the different perspective from my panel members here. But I'd like to talk about a case study, and this is a real example of where I was leading that charge, and we kind of, as a team, could deliver an initiative. So this was about a company that had about 7,000 employees in India. And the diversity ratios, so I'm personally very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the diversity ratio, because India was the largest setup of this company in India, in the global world, so any ratios from a gender diversity perspective impacted our global diversity numbers. So the mandate was, we were hovering at about 17%, and the mandate was that we have to bring it up to 34, 35%. And clearly, when we looked at our talent acquisition processes, for whatever reasons, I wouldn't like to say anything about the hiring managers, but for whatever reasons, there was a trend of men being considered more for all of the open positions. Maybe they were much more vocal, able to explain it better, and women had a challenge about explaining their success stories, on talking more about marketing their skills, etc. So we deployed artificial intelligence and machine learning to really start it from the scratch, took a step back to understand how we can leverage the tool on, and also what's the technology that we could leverage. We started looking at the initiatives that we could look at from a training the engine perspective. So we started with the job descriptions that were like, most of the job descriptions have he. So we started with gender neutral job descriptions, and we started focusing on what is the real job description, what the skills and the competencies are required. We had created them, deployed them into the tool that would actually look at that what's the real requirement, and each position that we posted, and typically this organization that I worked for one position posted, we would get at least 600 resumes, because that was like a huge resume data pool that was coming in, but we were not able to get to the right point, because from first to the 5 application, we would hire one of them who was best suited for the job, and we didn't look at the 595. So with having the right job description, deploying AI, we removed the gender from the resumes. We white masked the resume with all the personal details of the individual, ran the simulation, and we had to train the tool to really come up with the right match for the hiring manager. So rather than evaluating those even hundred of resumes to get to one selection of candidates. We said we wanted to create an ease for the candidate and also the hiring manager. So then the tool kind of gave, the output was that just 10 resumes, then profiles, not revealing who the gender is, not revealing what the background of this individual is, which part of India or which location this individual is, to really present to the hiring managers just top 10 candidates or top 10 profiles. And he said, no, that's not right. Or she said, no, that's not right. We came down to 5. And in the whole process, we removed the bias and we got the talent, the quality of hire to move to the next level, because we did measure the quality of hire year on year basis. So when you look at the profile with the relevant skills, competence, irrespective of the gender, right profile match, that individual was able to really get onto the learning curve fairly fast and deliver to the organization's objectives. And in about 18 months time, that was like that was a case study for us as global organization in the global world as well. So from a 17% we went to about 32% of gender diversity in India. So that was like a big success story, but it did take a lot of efforts in terms of our change management, acceptance to our hiring managers, educating our candidates as well if their profiles were not right, and also getting the job descriptions or HR jobs. So there were three things that we talked about: the candidate experience, leadership, hiring experience, and also HR, because in a way that we kind of, our talent acquisition teams could do better jobs into doing something else by leveraging this tool and platform. I understand this continues to be used. And the company, while I don't work for it anymore, and I've joined Universal Sampo a month ago, the kind of really going up into the gender diversity numbers, and the bias is certainly being removed into various other processes. Maybe in the subsequent section, I'll talk about that, what we're doing in terms of our talent management and learning and development practices. Thank you, Rajesh.
Sure. Thanks. I think that was pretty insightful perspective indeed. But I think when it comes to diversity, the most fundamental thing is God, right? And the God is always referred as He. So we do worship goddesses, but unfortunately we always say He did this to me and He did that to me. I think that's a fundamental change that we need to bring about in our minds. So when we were working, and my company was listed on NASDAQ, so obviously we had to comply with certain regulations. So again, typical HR response, diversity, start training. Okay, let's train people. I said, okay, we will train people, but what is it? What is the content of the training? So my training manager, again, he said that, okay, we'll get all the ladies together. And my immediate response was, if diversity is an issue, then the training is required to men and not women. I think it's a matter of culture that we need to talk about, okay? So just like diversity, inclusion is all about cultures, technological developments and other things which are happening now, the culture of innovation is also extremely important, right? So I think my next question to you, Vamsi, in terms of culture of innovation, how that's very important, because in isolation people get trained and all that kind of stuff, but if you really want the entire system to drive the crank up the engine for technological advancement, how do you work on cultural side of the story? We spoke about machine learning and AI, but I think what more important is the culture. So would you please throw some light on the cultural side of the story?
So I think when we talk about the culture, right, I believe it needs to be worked on the core of it, right? A core in both sense. So one is, core is ensuring the fundamentals are there. Second is, I think first we need to create curiosity among what is the direction as an organization that we want to drive. If it's technology, if it's diversity, if it's data, right? I think we need to create a sense of curiosity among the employees so that it's more a pull rather than push, okay? Because more often, I mean, these cultural surveys or initiatives comes to a point where you're pushing something into the employees rather than making them, right? Second is, I think while we are trying to drive that agenda, we also needs to ensure that there is openness in terms of receiving feedback. We want to be digitally savvy, we want to be data driven, but is that what that respective organization is ready for? So if there is a feedback that comes that your business orientation is different, but you're trying to align some other culture, I mean, there needs to be openness to take feedback, right? Third is about rewards. So I firmly believe in is that anything that you pay attention to, it grows, right? And anything which you reward, though it can be still the old philosophy of stick and reward. I mean, the question is, it need not be in those purest reward terms, but what do you reiterate and reward? So if you are trying to talk about technology, I mean, are you rewarding people for even making mistakes but trying in that direction, right? And finally, if we have to talk about, okay, is empower, okay? We need to ensure that the change comes from them. So your curiosity, the cycle starts with curiosity and ends with empowerment, okay? So I'll give you an example. In my current organization, uh, we had this traditional way of driving learning and development, right? You create a TNIA and then you put a calendar, then you also drive organization initiatives. So what we just tried just few months ago is we flipped it, okay? We created a initiative called Own Your Learning, right? It's very simple. I mean, you own your learning. So in this, what we have done is we have classified responsibilities into three, okay? One is the responsibility of an employee. Second is the employee's manager or the supervisor. Third is what the organization means, right? And the responsibility is very simple. Employee is responsible for your own learning and development, okay? Now, what is manager's responsibility is guiding the employee to make choices, right? Whether you want to, whether it's domain or behavioral or leadership, okay? Manager here or the supervisory level acts as a mentor to say, if the employee comes, okay, these are the choices. I can give you a very rudimentary example is the basic thing everybody comes is, I want PowerPoint training and Excel training, right? I mean, this, we can get it everywhere in the organization. Even in that, the manager's responsibility is to say whether your proficiency is at the beginner level or at the advanced level. I'm giving you a very basic example, right? What is organization's responsibility? Very, very clear, right? One, to provide all the tools and resources available for the employee to get trained. Second, okay, ensure that as a culture, there is dedicated time and resources for people to get trained. So we have something called weekly once a learning hour. Learning hour, we actually send across invites to all the employees to say that in this hour, everybody should indulge in some learning activity. It can be self-learning, certification, domain, etc. Right? So by this, again, we are going back to the core, right? Curiosity, openness, reward, and ensure there is empowerment. So if, I mean, this is again an experiment. There is no hard and fast rule, right? I mean, we have Peter Singh who spoke about learning organization decades ago, but still we are trying to rediscover it, right? So this is one approach which seems to be showing some amount of, okay, development towards what we want to achieve. But again, time will say.
Great. I think core, I really love that acronym. A little more about you. Possibly are still belong to a different planet. I mean, I'm not talking about the generational diversity. We'll talk about it later. But in our sector, that is an IT sector, we used to call it frozen middle. And what is frozen middle is the middle management has lost it out because the technological change is so rapid and so exponential that when you guys, the comfort level that you guys have with this kind of gadgets is so nice that the others possibly are not. And they become, a biggest stumbling block in not only for you guys who are joining, young Turks who are like raring to go, but at the same time, development of the organization. We tried our level best. At some point in time, I gave up and hung up my boots, but I think people like Sundar are still active at it. So I'd like to request Sundar, how do you crack this frozen middle? Because they're high-cost employees and low, value add to the organization. You can't just lay them off. Their travel from employability to unemployability has been rapid. And I think I would like to know more from you about tackling this frozen middle, because that's how the technology would get driven.
Thanks. What a interesting jargon, which I learned again today. Okay, it gives me, it takes me back in time a few years. People slightly older than me, maybe people who are on the verge of, in their late 50s or 60s today. And who were like mentors to me when I was growing up. a lot of chartered accountants, because the college I went to in Chennai, 75% of the batch became chartered accountants. So a lot of these guys went into consulting or the big four, and a lot of them gravitated towards the Middle East. And then they, diversified into multiple organizations, and they were into fairly senior roles, making pots of money. And then came 2008. And a big crash, and I remember my brother used to be there in the Middle East. Construction got hit in a big way, and anybody who was in the Middle East was somehow related to either construction or one of the jumbo electronics or big Lulu Mall kind of enterprises. Because there was hardly any manufacturing then at that point in time. It was all trading. So they got all hit badly, and they had large spends, large debt. Children studying in the West, large liabilities. So much so that there are real stories that I know of where people actually drove to the airport, parked their car, and left their car and the debt behind at the airport parking, and then flew back home. What were these people facing? I'll take you back in time to my B school days. One of the first projects I did in B school was manager at the Crossroads, and we branded it as the Trishanku complex. Okay, and it's still so interestingly fresh in memory. That's what good B schools and B school experiences can do. So today's middle management is at the crossroads, and it's not now. It's always been in a crossroads. It's a different kind of crossroads. So what can an organization do? So what happens is progressive organizations, typically the senior management come up the curve because they have the benefit of some advisory or going to a consulting firm, or their shareholders pushing them hard to and when you are pushed to a corner, you innovate, right? So your top management is taken care of. Young Turks, as Rajesh mentioned, like you are very open and very open to learning. Your learning curve is high, learning index is high, and which leaves this middle management in a lurch. So what can organizations do? Okay, there are a number of things which we can do, and a classic thing which comes to my mind is. I don't know if you all know, Sachin Tendulkar had a weakness, okay, in his batting. And his weakness was playing on the offside, spin bowling on the offside. Okay, and you know what he did? He turned it around, and with the help of his coach, Mr. Achrekar, he turned it around, and he, I won't say he patented, but he made the reverse sweep so popular. And today, it's a shot which is practically used, by everybody in 2020. And this he did in the one-day era. So, we have to innovate and find ways of using the middle management, because, we typically, when we do a SWOT, you focus on the weaknesses. Okay, we need to leverage the strengths, which is where you get the best bang for the buck. I'll give you one or two examples, which I have experienced. One big experience for me is, growing horizontal, growing diagonal. Okay, and there is so much pressure on growing vertical. Okay, how soon will I make VP? How soon will I make SVP, EVP, DVP, whatever? It's so, the pressure is so high. If you stay focused on how, and if you appeal to the middle management, how can you stay happy? How can you stay contented? And what is your strength? If let's say you're plateauing in the sales field, can you move to learning? If you plateau in the sales field, can you move to compliance? If you plateau in the ops field, it's getting dull and boring. Can I move to quality? The options are endless, and add to that, with so much of dynamic change happening today, you have functions which are converging. I'll give you a classic example, in the insurance domain. What do you think would be the qualifications of a CFO, let's say 5 to 6 years down the line? Okay, and let's say what would be the qualifications of a CFO, let's say 10 years back. 10 years back, 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10 would be chartered accountants or a ICWA or a combination of CA, ICWA, CS or an MBA finance, that kind of stuff, right? With IFRS coming in, we would need a CFO to be very well versed in actual studies, right? So we need to look at tomorrow. And today, the mid-management, if they can do these two golden words of upskill, reskill, and constantly challenge themselves, and organizations need to appeal to that emotion, that you can do a lot. You don't need to plateau. Okay, there are various ways to grow. If we can appeal to that, I think we have a gold mine of mid-management which is out there, and if we convert this threat into an opportunity, sky's the limit.
Very well said. I think threat into opportunity and asset into liability, or rather liability into asset. Okay, because they have become liabilities, we have to convert them into assets. But that's really a big problem. Talking of generational diversity is just a kind of, again, I'm not trying to scare you, but when you join any organization, one of the most scary books over there is called Policy Handbook. Because the policy handbook tells you how things cannot be done and not be done. Now that I'm out of it, I can always criticize it. I'm sorry about it for my esteemed colleagues. But yeah, the policy, and why I'm talking about the policy handbook is for the simple reason is, AI and ML helps you to create something called personalization and hyper-personalization. And I'm alluding towards, in policy handbook, one size fits all. Okay, it's plain vanilla kind of policies. Your generation and maybe a generation before you, I'm talking about Gen Z as well as millennials, want everything personalized. Your mobiles are personalized, their screens are personalized, your caller tunes are personalized. Unlike my generation, where one piece of cloth would come and three brothers would wear the same shirts, and that's what policy handbook is all about. I think Vikram has done
just looked all black. I'm sure it is not black there.
very, very good observation. So Vikram has done some, nice work in the area of personalization of policies. Now that's something which is really revolutionary, okay? And that's going to be future as well. So I'd like to request Vikram to come up with what exactly and how exactly you have done and what is the way forward as well. Because I think even I would be interested in knowing more about how personalization of policies can be done.
Thanks, Rajesh. Before even I get into starting on that, let's ask actually the students here actually, and who are going to be the future leaders. A lot of times you will be hearing a lot of gyan about HR while you will be studying a lot about insurance actually in that way. So, and how do you learn in your classes or at hostel or at home whatsoever? Maybe I'll give you a little peep further in that ways. All of you would be learning by obviously listening to somewhere some of your coveted teachers which are there. You would be reading about in terms of the Google and WhatsApp universities on your phone, and some of the times you would be with your peers in terms of understanding, and some bit of that even in your schools you would still remember, and same way for your college you would still remember, which means before coming to personalization, which means each one of you is different. Do you all agree? If you all agree, which means that, one of the things which Rajesh actually pointed out, one piece of cloth and everybody actually wearing the same. Nothing bad, because cloth is meant to cover us and save us from the weather. But still all of us have, the need is the same, but the desire is different, and each one of us wants a customized fit. And a customized fit doesn't mean only the fit, the way and what you wear actually, and you can see each one of us also equally different. So it's not an age phenomena, it's a human phenomena in that way. So if this we were to take to learning, and say in organizations, same as like schools and colleges, can we provide a hyper personalized solution to each one of our learning needs, but equally be democratized in terms of the offerings which are there, which are based on your persona, individual persona? Does a Facebook and a Netflix provide that? Or no? Or yeah? Yes. Oh, I can't hear it actually, frankly. Do you think a Amazon, Netflix, or a Facebook or whatsoever Insta provides that? You do a certain search on Google, and every second day you find certain ads coming to you, which is nothing but basis you sharing what you like. You start to experience a world, same world, in a very different way. So what we thought was, can't we look in learning and build a kind of a Netflix of learning, which is basically, the problem is we build customization and hyper customization, which becomes personalization in that ways. But equally, the problem is we have limited resources. You won't be subscribing an organization as an employee to pay for learning. No, that doesn't happen. I'm telling you a practical aspect, which somehow later, once you get into the corporate world, then you don't have a subscription fees with you, but you still make something which makes financial sense. So what we started to do was, we said, let's do certain research with our employees of all demographics. And a lot of times people have a thing of saying certain generations don't use lesser of technological content and get to the new technology than the people with lesser age. Actually, mobile does it the other way around. People use social communication tools at a senior age more than people at a younger age, and that's proven in the Indian telecom. If you were to read about in India how the revolution has actually happened. So we did surveys with all types of people in our organization. We said, what would you like and how would you like to consume? What would you like to consume? How would you like to consume learning? With that service, what we started to build was, and there was an interesting trend, because most of our organization, we talk about what is available within our organization, which is like available within a school or within a college, and those like typical CBSE books or NCRT books, whatsoever are there. If you go through a CBSE, then you have a NCRT in that way. So what we said is that doesn't stop, because each one of us goes through a Google and a WhatsApp university on a day in, day out. And some of the times even more than what we do it in the class, unless the exam comes in. Some of you may be other way around, so I'm not saying that way. So what we did was, we built our internal IPs and we got everything to become not only, so we built an app. The app was designed in a way that something like a marketplace works, which is like a Netflix or Amazon, which means that everything should be available on a marketplace for you to choose as a employee or as a student. We tied up with actually the Ivy colleges, which normally people love to read about, like Harvard. We tied up with some of the data repositories, which is like Forbes, because a lot of you may want and learn by reading, which is artifacts or articles. Not everybody. Some of you may want a AV. So what we did was very different. We tied up with TED. Now TED, nobody does it actually. But we have to, again, there was something which Sunil highlighted and Anaga also highlighted, GDPR. So what kind of a content and to whom and what we can upload. So we have to design it on the back end. So one is consumption, what is upload in that way. So you design the outer boundaries, which is there. But within that, you tie up with something which is very, very innovative. Now a TED is nothing but like a teacher actually teaching in a class, and you get a record of it. And then something we did different was a peer-to-peer. So there are few people who come together. So you also have a conduit where like-minded discussions happen on a particular topic. People can join at any moment of time or come out. We started with the first run of that. And basis your persona of the past, which is, say, suppose each one of you would have a different streams in your 11th or 12th, and maybe you're learning still now in your year what you are doing. And in companies, it is about what jobs do you do, and you heard about saying ops, finance, technology, whatsoever. That defines your pre-existing persona. And as and when you start to search, like on a Facebook or a Google or on a Netflix or an Amazon, The persona develops to what you like and what you consume at what moment of time and how much at one shot. Each one of us has an attention span, which is different. Each one of us has a time when we like to read and learn or hear and learn. Some of you may be as late as 1 o'clock. Some of you may want to do it in the morning. So there is no one way. While we used to hear early morning, the brain works well, but each one of us is different. So what we said, why learning on a particular time only, and makes it in bits and pieces, and let people do it. And there are assessments for certain pieces which are like compliance related, which our organization wants. But the whole concept was you may learn in whatever way you want to, because, and Vamsi mentioned, you are responsible for your own learning. So at the end of the day, for your job, you know, and we defined for every job what you need to know. But we were not only functional, we were also saying behavioral leadership type. How do you develop? But it's your choice, nobody's else choice. And but you provide that app, which actually becomes so powerful that over a period of time, you only start to navigate everything through that and consume everything through that. The last bit was over a period of time, learning was on the content. A difference between a Netflix and a Doordarshan some of the times is a content. Not that anything is good or bad. You have no choices. Some of the times that certain channels fade away. But Netflix has a very engaging content because it measures what people want to see and what do they read. So we get the content on the top which people want, and there is a new content which needs to get. So we are in the way of building a content marketplace which our employees build it up with the use of generational AI, with the contours of obviously IDPR, which may come in, or GDPR at this moment of time, and then make it more exciting. So, what happens in this whole process is the hyper personalization with the democratization of learning or skills, as what we call it, helps to build an organization which cares for everybody as an individual unit of organization, as a full bloated organization. So each one of us becomes like a full bloated client as an employee internal, rather than actually meaning that all of us will get the same learning. Which is, so you pick and choose yours. In the end objective is what you would want to meet for yourself within the peripheries of the data laws, to in terms of what's required for the next role which you would want to do. So that's what we had tried to build up in 2019. 2020 we launched it. Good part is adoption, which normally in training, which we think, while attendance is just one prerogative of it, which most of the organization and balance sheets state, my personal view is that's the most outdated one, because we don't know whether the minds are there when they are attending that training. To where we are right now is more than 92% continuously for 4 years, which is so it is in 90s always. And we measure not only by one training, we say if every month you should be logged in, which is more important. And we measure it by the outcome of the skills learned, rather than actually on the the at that moment of time what have they done actually in that phase.
Wow. And they said that Netflix is only for entertainment. What a way to cross pollinate. Really appreciate this. So there are three kind of learnings, as one of the taxonomy says, right? One kind of learning is in the box thinking, the other is out of the box thinking, and the third is what he just said, which is without the box thinking. So really appreciate what you what you did. So Anaga, coming to you, combining what Sundar said just now, and he spoke about, Vamsi spoke about core, and now we have just heard about personalized training. I think the most important thing which is common in all three themes is upskilling, retooling, and reskilling. And I think the whole world is now struggling to have a strategies to get into all this. You come from E and Y, which is like you are the ones who teach all these things to the rest of the world. So like to know more about how various things are happening in terms of retooling, reskilling, because if that doesn't happen, it's going to be failure. So like to know more about upskilling, retooling, and reskilling.
Yeah, definitely. So these two words, reskilling and upskilling, we've been hearing about that for the last, I think now 3 years consistently. And what I've seen is people use these words interchangeably, reskilling and upskilling. So I'm going to do the absolute, as I'm in an academia environment, I'm going to define what reskilling is and what upskilling is. So reskilling is when you give new skills to an employee or your workforce for a new position within the organization, whereas upskilling is preparing your workforce for a major change in their existing position. So this is the basic difference between reskilling and upskilling. Now I'll go back to what I said earlier about creating sustainable value. Sustainable value can only be created if people are at the heart of the transformation. And how can people be at the heart of transformation without upskilling and reskilling? It's impossible. So I'll give you an example of what Amazon did, and EY was involved in that exercise, where because of the automation, the warehouse employees, which were about over 500,000, were at the risk of being phased out. And Amazon involved EY in helping them upskill and some of them reskill, and then reposition them in the IT department, in the customer support department, and they were provided jobs in various teams, and that was possible only because of upskilling and reskilling. These words sound quite easy, but there's a framework which is generally followed by every organization to achieve that. And that framework, again, is fairly straightforward. We call it the EAAT framework. What does that mean? So E stands for evaluate. So you evaluate what your current skills landscape is. What are the gaps in the landscape, and what is the organizational requirement 5 years later, 2 years later for the skills gap? And as HR, this is what you would be doing to analyze what the skills gap is. The next one is align. In my mind, that is one of the most important things. So now here is where the organization defines what their goals are, and also the individual goals of what training. So now we've had two examples here of owning your training, owning your career path. The workforce right now is very woke, if I can use that word. Everybody knows what their purpose for joining an organization is. Is it sustainable value? Is it Gen AI tools? What is it? Everybody knows why they are joining a certain organization. Do your personal goals, do your personal purpose matches that with the organizations? And that is where this customized engagement comes of alignment. And as HR, we would expect this vision to be clearly articulated to the employees so they know what direction or path they are going. So first we evaluate the skills landscape, then A is we align that to our personal purpose and that of the business, and then we activate the training, and that is where the personalized training would come into place. And as I see the trend of owning your own training, EY has done something similar. So EY invested about $450 million in training. So they do have the mandatory trainings where everybody just flips through and makes sure that we have certified, we understand what everything is. But apart from that, a major portion of the funds that EY had for this training goes in owning your training. So you can literally pick any training, any topic that you would like based on either mentorship, coaching. There are online platforms, there are various academic institutions that you can tie up with and gain those qualifications and move to different departments or even gain new skills. So this is the activate bit, which I can see that a lot of organizations are doing. L'Oreal recently removed all of the recruitment handbooks and the way they recruit.
Wow.
Yeah, recently. And out of the talent pool of 12,000 applicants for interns, they recruited 80. And this was all done by AI. And the team was 4 people strong who did this. And how they did it is the AI helped them look through the gems that we usually overlook in a CV. Yes, we look at all of the great performers, all of the people who've done absolutely amazing work, but sometimes we miss out on the little things in the CV. And now as HR, we don't have to spend hours scouring through CVs to find out of the 12,000 which ones will meet our needs, our requirements first. And there was about 250 hours of saving as well reported. And now this is the new way of working. So we've evaluated the landscape, we have aligned it, we have activated our learning, and the last step is tracking and monitoring. So assigning the right KPIs, making sure that we understand how close or how far we are from achieving the business goals. Usually fine-tuning things, going back, feedback, and it is an iterative process every time. So rescaling and reshaping is changing the world in a big way. And there are so many use case examples where organizations have changed the face of employee engagement. Learning and development definitely is coming up. And there are some low-hanging fruits that we can aim. As HR, what are our pain points? Those iterative tasks of admin, that can be a chatbot that can help employees answer commonly asked questions. What is the second low-hanging fruit? Internal comms. With minimum human intervention, AI can generate so much quality comms, saves us time. Third, going through scores of performance management documentation, which has been filled by operations. What words are being used? We talked about diversity, we talked about gender equality here. We observed in EY that the words that were used to describe a female employee in the performance management and the words that were being used to describe a male employee were fairly different. Leading, managing, collaborating, delivering. You know who I'm talking about as soon as I use these words. Those words and this analysis was done by EY, and we trained the trainers. We trained the employees who conducted these performance reviews to then see how we can break the glass ceiling, how we can break the gender pay gap. Again, that is a big thing in the West. And AI can help us, HR professionals, save time on these trends, analysis, finding out information, so we can do the real stuff, the real strategy, the real meat, and add some flesh to the bones.
Great. In fact, nice to know that ENY invested about $500 million. AT&T invested $1 billion in terms of upskilling their employees. That's a huge investment comes out. Siemens on the record has declared 30% improvement in productivity because of upskilling and reskilling. So great. I think that's something which is the mantra for almost everyone. But whatever is trained, like Drucker famously said, that whatever can't be measured cannot be developed, right? So let's come to the last end of the entire stuff, which is about skill assessments and creating skill metrics. And Preeti, you have done a lot in that area. So would you please take us through in that?
So I'll be quick because in the interest of time. So I think COVID has taught us a lot of things. Things have changed the way that we work. And I was, along with the leadership team, working on the future of work and future of workforce and elements of skill, learning and development, talent acquisition management, etc. But I'd like to talk about the topic that has possibly been touched upon by Sundar briefly about the middle management, and also the generation Z and Y, saying that how do I progress more and quickly? So I'll talk about, so enough talked about the learning and development and everything else. We kind of looked at a problem statement that how do we really look at the future of workforce, and also bring the skills and the knowledge of our people and ensure there's a career development opportunities presented to our employees who are higher in aspiration, because we used to hire, we were hiring a lot from the B schools, the technology colleges, and everything else. So the aspiration to move up the value chain, and also the point that Sundar, you said, the multiple skills, multiple backgrounds that future of work is going to be. It's not that you have been part of one function, so you'll be only part of that one function. So we did create, and Vikram touched upon the talent marketplace. So we did use AI to create a talent marketplace, but that was the front end of the talent marketplace. From the back end, what we kind of used was the HRIS systems. So what HRIS systems in an evolved organization would look like: if I'm an employee, what's my background, my talent profile, my date of joining, my career progression in the company in my past organization, but I also integrated from the back end the learning and development platform. So if Preeti is part of that talent marketplace, so my whole history, geography of me as an employee, but what have I learned from my e-learning modules, what additional qualifications have I added to my own profile as part of my journey in the organization. So if I did an MBA, so that talent marketplace was the front end for the employees and the managers that was created. The back end was all the inputs, but the front end, and we also provided the employees the opportunity to update themselves. So like you create your LinkedIn profiles, the fancy stuff that you want to put your recommendations, and if you've done a recent, you've done your project and everything else. So from the back end, the company data was coming. Front end, the employees have the possibility to really update their skills and knowledge and areas of interest. And the fourth thing, what we did was that we integrated the talent acquisition module. So each new opportunity, the open roles that came in, and if the employee had a preference, so if I'm Preeti, I'm in HR, but I want to work in marketing because I feel that's where my preference is all about. And I don't want to work in India, I'd like to explore a job opportunity in the US. And this was a global organization. So I can put my aspirations, and the tool would kind of look at my experience. There were like open positions that came in that kind of match from the back end, from the AI, saying that, okay, Preeti could be a potential good candidate for an opportunity that's sitting in the US. And that my profile would be presented to the hiring manager. And there were times that Preeti had a preference to get into the marketing, but then she wasn't sure about it. So there are two opportunities that we created. One was if I have the relevant experience in addition to HR for 2 decades, I had 10 years of experience in marketing. Hence, I could be a strong candidate for the marketing role based out of another country. But if Preeti was not from marketing, so I could say, I could raise my hand and hiring manager was open to it, say doing a special project for 6 to 12 months. That could be an arrangement. It could be on-site or could be done virtually, depending on the budget that the hiring manager has. And once Preeti was confident that, yeah, I'm good at marketing, and my hiring manager said, yeah, she's a great talent, then only I will progress my function to being a marketing professional. Otherwise, I could continue being in part of the human resources, because that's what I thought I'm not good at it, but then eventually I realized working in marketing, I can be a better professional being in HR. And in a way that kind of helped, and I'm just took my own example because it was easy to explain, but there were like plenty of success stories that we created for our talent, not only within the country for really cross-skilling, functionally adding more knowledge about different functions they could do, but we also created a plan. So this was like addressing the career aspirations, but also looking at the workforce planning and also the headcount planning of the organization. Helped us using this AI tool to really ensure that the career aspirations and of our employees has been met, but also from a workforce that we could really leverage on some of the cost elements of it for deploying these resources from cross countries to save some budget as well for creating this opportunity. So this was like a great example of talent marketplace, and we called it as Unlocked. It was called as Unlock the opportunities in the company for employees and the organization. It was a very successful story. So clearly, AI, ML is the future that in the HR world that we have been experiencing, and we continue to, I would use the word exploit, explore, and see that there are benefits. There are times that we failed as well as what we were trying to put together in terms of our talent management strategies. But this is a journey as much as you train the tool and also keep sharpening the expectations and the inputs that you put into the process. It will certainly help us. While it's still in progress, we're doing a success planning pilot in the organization, because this is 30,000 people organization. What typically in HR world would do is we look at the succession planning of the top talent, and we'll have only 5 candidates that we know in our geography, right? But they are equally good people in, so within the Asian markets, and I'm going not across different continents, who could be a better candidate for this particular kind of a role? Or in different, if I look at only within the national territory, then it could be, we look at only in particular, say, Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Calcutta, but they could be in the tier 2 towns. There are very strong talents that could be doing. So we're piloting that bit as well to see, not only leaving it to the managers to look at their favorites to do the succession planning, but then expand. The tool kind of throws a few names, and we do the validation, and it is something that we will explore and deploy that soon too. Thank you, Rajesh. So
great, thank you so much, and that was really brisk and quick, conclusion to the entire discussion. So thank you so much. I think we did pretty well, though we started a little late, so 5 minutes over time. But yeah, I think Vikram started with the evolution, then Vamsi and Sundar spoke about the core of ML, and then the threats, which is bias, and GDPR, data privacy, right? Both of them, Anga as well as Preeti, spoke about that. And all of us spoke about the ecosystem which is required. I think it was a very comprehensive discussion. So thank you so much for all your contributions. And as my favorite statement, General Patton once said that, war are, fought with weapons, but won by human beings. So, your weapons are there, but ultimately it's you who's going to be winning the wars, right? So I think how effectively you handle AI and ML in your capacity is going to be the game changer. So thank you so much, the organizers, and that's all. Great discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the experts for sharing their valuable insights and contributing to this enriching discussion. At this time, I would request my colleagues to kindly present a token of gratitude to the experts.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. With this, we end the first panel discussion. The next session will commence at 12:15 p.m. after the short tea break.